I'd like to begin today by painting you a picture quite different from one that y'all might be familiar with today. The brisk break of dawn, a man emerges from his sturdy, small cabin in the backwoods of Minnesota. Walking through the fog towards his farm, his two sons trail along with him. The day has just begun, but the duties required to be undertaken are many. Now, the work he's about to do may not be the most glamorous, nor may it be the most profitable. However, they may be the most efficient way of furthering who he is as a human. Now, imagine this man's view of success to be the development of his character and the development of his family. This includes teaching his sons how to be men of virtue, how to be responsible, and to provide for those closest to him in his community. This man is aware of his place in the long, cold emptiness of time, and yet he chose to use his life to further his virtue in the tiny frame of it that he's given. Today, our vision of a successful life is no longer focused on the development of one's character, but rather it is focused in the satiating of one's desires to the greatest extent, for tomorrow we shall die. The lives once centered around becoming whole now focus on time management for the greatest partition of pleasure. Now, mortality is the realization that our time is a scarce and a limited resource. As humans, we want to use our time to the most efficient way possible. In the past, there's been this consistent desire to spend our lives developing ourselves as a full and a complete person. We've crafted our institutions after these ideals and to support these ideas, these identities that we have. Unfortunately, it seems today, the goals of these entities has evolved into engineering men to produce the greatest balance between production and pleasure. Today, we no longer cease to use this time to develop ourselves into men and women of virtue. Rather, we have chosen to dedicate our lives and our time to the nebulous pursuit of happiness in the form of pleasure. Today, I'm going to be examining 3 different institutions to describe and to illustrate the shift between pursuing virtue and character and life and the pursuit of pleasure. These institutions I'm going to examine are commerce, education, and governance. And by no means I'm going to hope to cover all these things, because several PhD theses can be written on just a subsection. So I'm going to be tying them together just through the lens of mortality that we're using today. So now, to begin with commerce. Commerce has undergone a revolutionary change of the past several centuries. While it may be true that our ability to produce has increased exponentially due to the popularization of the supply chain, of the assembly line, the division of labor, it for the most part has become nothing more than a means to an end. Educations and vocations like being a blacksmith, a farmer, a knight, a king, a queen, a merchant, a priest, no longer define one's role in his or her community. Rather, they've become a way of deriving the greatest income. We are willing to abandon the service we provide to those around us for pecuniary gain as we climb the ladder towards our American dream. We're treating work as a means to an end, not as a calling. Our vocation has been degraded into nothing more than a pastime to earn a salary, an activity without moral significance. We seek to maximize our financial gain to reach a point of leisurely living for the rest of our short lives in order to avoid the pain and the frustration we face that may in fact make us a better, a more full, and a more virtuous human being. Commerce is not a means of developing our humanity and serving those around us as God intended it to be, but rather it's become a means of acquiring the maximum amount of pleasure in our short lives. Similarly, the institutionalization of education also serves as a tool of maximizing pleasure. It is but another example of how, as a society, we've reoriented our existence from being people of, we're preparing ourselves to be men and women of character and integrity, to simply preparing ourselves for the rat race and for the pursuit of pleasure. What used to be a one-room schoolhouse turned into a system of infinite specialization, and by no means I'm advocating a return to that, because we wouldn't be here then. But I just think it's funny today that you can get a PhD in industrial engineering quality assurance management. I mean, this is just an example of our education's fixation with plugging another cog into the system of pleasure to derive as much return as possible. The end goal is no longer to develop yourself as a person, but rather to gain a piece of paper, the piece of paper to gain you a proper position, and that proper position to give you pleasure in your short life. We've relegated our education to the role of a necessary evil that will allow us to participate in commerce, yet another necessary evil. We do so in order to reach the ideal point where life is nothing but pleasure. The first 20 years of one's life is focused on preparing oneself with the tools and the techniques in order to work. We specialize to the maximum degree possible so that becoming the most efficient and the most scarce cog in a machine, we may receive the greatest compensation by taking our place in the machine of commerce. This crucial period of preparation during one's education is simply to reach the final years of leisure in the most efficient and profitable way possible. Now, given the conditions of commerce and the worldview established, government is now looked at as the moral arbiter and the entity to preserve an individual's pursuit of pleasure. Note, this is not a pursuit of life, of liberty, of passion, of freedom, of truth. It is a pursuit of pleasure that we are being entitled to. What used to be a way of preserving people's ability to act in the fullness of their character is now a means of incentivizing the maniacal pursuit of pleasure. With the safety net of Social Security, our government has created an unspoken contract with each of us that if you work your way to 65, you will have a guaranteed base level of pleasure for the rest of your life. Now, this is a major contrast with Benjamin Constant's understanding of a Republican form of government, where we are supposed to be morally incentivized to participate in government, not because it benefits ourselves, but because it's the right thing to do. These safety nets, these welfare, these entitlement programs we're given incentivize us to participate in government for our own ends, vote for our own benefits, and ultimately for our own pleasure. Now, our understanding of mortality now includes a clause where we are entitled to a period of leisure once we've put in our required hours. The American dream so many of us esteem is really just an incentive to furiously work our way our lives in the most efficient way possible, to gain a blissful 2 or 3 decades tanning on a beach in Florida, wearing your blazer with a margarita in hand, eating your plate of lobster in the sun. Death is but a constraint and a limitation of the resource of time. And our governance has struck a deal where we are entitled to a life of leisure once we've maximized our most efficient years. Now, I want to paint you one more picture. This one may be more familiar. In fact, it may be even more comfortable. A man wakes up, walks down the stairs of his 5-bedroom house, goes to a stainless steel kitchen, makes himself a fine single-origin cup of coffee. New Zealand roast. Excellent. He stares out the window across his manicured lawn, looking to the white picket fence, which marks the edge of what belongs to him. He kisses his wife and kids on his forehead, puts on his Brooks Brothers suit, walks out to his white Lexus, and drives it out of the gated community to his plush New York executive suite, Central Park Views. This is the American dream, and by all means, he's made it. The question I'm asking you today is, has he? In our short lives, is this pursuit of pleasure the extent of what it means to be human? Thank you.